Hello everyone, it's me again. Welcome back to this lesson. Today we're going to talk about bending. So you can find bending in clause 3.2 of AS 1720.1. And just to give you a perspective, typically members with medium loads and medium spans will be governed by bending. For heavy loads and very short spans, shear will govern. And then for light loads and long spans, or even for medium loads but long spans, deflection will govern. So rafters, floor joists, and most beam elements in residential design will be governed by deflection. We'll still have to make sure that we check those members for the ultimate limit state in bending. The new variables that we are introducing to the equation now are K6, K12, FB, and Z. Z is the elastic section modulus, which is a geometric property used in the design of flexural members. For a rectangular cross-section, BD square divided by 6. You should be familiar with that already when you studied mechanics of materials. And then we have K9 strength sharing factor, which you can find on clause 2.4.5. And as the name suggests, it's a strength sharing factor. So when you have multiple beams working together, they can help each other to carry the loads. So instead of using the strength of the weakest member, you might use a value that it's close to the average strength of all the beams. K9 applies to side laminated members, like you can see here in this first image. We call it a combined system, and NCOM equals the number of members laminated together. So in this case, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, so NCOM equals 4. K9 also applies to parallel members spaced close to each other and with cross members connecting them together. So you can imagine a bunch of floor joists with the flooring connected at the top of the joists, and we call this a discrete system. And NM equals the number of members capable of effectively share the loads. So you can see here that there is a effective load sharing area, and that area includes only 1, 2, 3 joists, and that's why NMEM equals 3. So for this example of the joists, we assume that the flooring has a limited load sharing capacity, and therefore we consider that the effective load sharing area include only 3 joists. We can also have a combination of both systems. So this will be a discrete system with laminated beams. In most floor designs, only a few joists will effectively share the load. So for calculations, we usually assume NMEM equals 3. Now, if you look at AS 1720.3, which is the residential timber code, they will use NMEM equals 5. So, you can use between 3 and 5. I think it's a good number. Hey, real quick, if you are a structural engineer in Australia or studying engineering, I've put together a free webinar that shows you how I map out and detail connections like timber to steel, steel to concrete, and much more. It's based on an actual timber-framed residential project here in Australia, and it's packed with tips, examples, and practical advice. It's free. Click the link and I'll see you there. To work out K9, we're just going to use this formula. G31 and 32 are geometric parameters, and we can find them on this table. S is the spacing of the members, and L is the length of the members. You should get a value greater than 1, or if you just want to be conservative, just make K9 equals 1. For LVL and glue lump, K9 equals 1 always, and that's because LVL and glue lump are products that are fabricated already from a number of pieces glued together. So the design strength properties for them already reflect some average of the properties of each individual element. Therefore, strength sharing already takes place within these members. So for LVL, glue lamp, K9 equals 1. Now let's talk about slenderness. We've seen S3 and S4 in the compression members. Now for bending members, we're going to talk about S1, which is the slenderness coefficient for bending members. In the following modules, when we start studying the design of steel beams, we're going to talk about lateral torsional buckling. And timber beams are no different. They are also subject to lateral torsional buckling, and we have to consider the slenderness and the restraints along the beam. I'm not going to go super in detail about lateral torsional buckling in this lesson because we're going to talk about that in the steel beam design lessons. But basically the same concepts apply. So ideally you want the restraints located along the critical edge of the beam, and in a simply supported beam the critical edge is the top face of the beam because it's in compression. For downward loads, of course, if it's upward loads, the bottom face of the beam will be in compression, and therefore the bottom face will be the critical edge of the beam. So essentially we have to work out S1, which is the slenderness coefficient, and for each scenario we have a different equation to find out S1. And these equations are all for beams of rectangular cross section. So they're a little bit different if you're using I-beams, I-joists. Figure 3.2, we have discrete restraints to the compression edge. So we're going to use this formula. If the restraints are to the tension edge, we should use this formula to find S1. If there is a continuous restraint along the compression edge, S1 equals 0. And if the continuous restraint is along the tension edge, S1 is equal to 2.25 times D divided by B. And this could be a case of a rafter, a roof rafter, subject to uplift wind forces, and then that roof rafter doesn't have a ceiling, but it has a roof restraining the top edge of the rafter. So you can use this formula to find the slenderness coefficient. And then we've got this last case, which is a continuous restraint along the tension edge combined with the discrete torsional restraint. And then you can find S1 using this equation. For these last three cases that I mentioned, continuous lateral restraint shall be assumed to exist if the ratio between LAY divided by D is less or equal than 64 times B divided by the material constant times D squared. So in this case here, we are assuming that the spacing between fasteners connecting the flooring to the beam is LAY, and LAY, as you can see, is the distance between restraints. In the case of a continuous lateral restraint, we are using the spacing between the fasteners connecting, let's say in this case, the flooring to the beam. This material constant rho B, you can find it on this table 3.1. So that's material constant for timber beams. For LVLs, you can find it on clause 8.4.7 of AS 1720.1. And then for glue lam, there's another table 7.2a, where you will find rho B, which is the material constant. Bear in mind that rho B is different from rho C. We have a material constant for bending and we have a material constant for compression, and they are different values. Therefore, if you're designing a member under combined actions, so you have combined bending and combined compression, you have to use different values of material constant. You're going to use rho B for the bending calculation, and then you're going to use rho C for the compression calculations. Don't mix them up. And then finally K12, which is the stability factor, you can find it on clause 3.2.4. It's very similar to what we've seen in the compression section. In fact, it's the same range. So the material constant times slenderness less than 10 is going to be a stocky member. So buckling is not a problem. Therefore, K12 equals 1. If material constant times slenderness is between 10 and 20, that means we have a transition between a stocky and a slender beam. Therefore, K12 is a little bit less than 1, and you can find it through this equation. And then if it's greater than 20, it means we have a slender beam, and then K12 is going to be less than 1 for sure. If you're designing a wind beam or any beam that has bending about the minor axis, like the wind force just blow perpendicular to the depth of the beam, and then you're going to have like an out of plane bending, K12 equals 1 always, because those beams, they're not subject to lateral torsional buckling. And we also talk about that in the lesson for steel beam design. So now you know all the factors to work out a member in bending. There's a flow chart here that you can follow to make it easier for you. And that's pretty much it. I'll see you in the next lesson.